Medicinal herbs are an essential part of being self-sufficient, whether you're homesteading or just starting out a new garden. We use medicinal herbs here all the time. I'll show you some of the herbs that we use here for us, our animals, the benefits that they offer pollinators in the garden, and how I personally use them. This beautiful plant right here is marshmallow, Althea officinalis. Anytime you hear the word officinalis in herbs, it was the traditional herb that was used for medicine that you'd find in pharmacies. This one is related to cotton, okra, and hollyhocks. One of the really cool characteristics about the marshmallow leaves is how downy, velvety, soft that they are. The shape of it is almost a cross between a heart and a maple leaf. And the underside is just a little bit lighter in color, almost a white color. And the flowers are generally white. Sometimes they'll have a pink hue to them or even a bluish hue to them, and they have 5 petals. The marshmallow plant can actually grow pretty big. As you can see, it can be 6 foot and even 7 foot if it's happy where it's at. So you want to make sure that you give it plenty of room. But one of the nice things is that you can take advantage of is you can plant some things near it that can get that afternoon shade to help them grow a little bit better. The marshmallow plant prefers rich and moist soil, so I put it right in my garden beds. Because the soil's loose, it makes it easier to dig the root when it's time. You can start marshmallow from either a root division or by a seed, and both of these are better done when you do it in the fall time. With a seed, you're able to plant it in the fall, and it goes through the winter time, and this stratifies that seed and helps break that really hard seed coat that the marshmallow seeds have. And by division, this is when the plant is dormant. All parts of the marshmallow plant are usable, but the roots have the highest medicinal quality. They're mucilaginous, and when we have anything that's mucilaginous, kind of like that oatmeal consistency, that just means that it's soothing. So it's soothing to the skin, soothing to the gut. It's just a soothing herb. Because marshmallow is so soothing and it's also very cooling, it's really good to make a poultice for irritated or inflamed skin. And sunburns it works really good for as well. Traditionally, marshmallow root tea has been used to treat UTIs and to soothe the lining of the gut for things like leaky gut syndrome. One of the things that I really like marshmallow root tea for is to soothe and coat the throat. So if you've had a sore throat or you've had a dry and hacking cough, that mucilaginous quality of that marshmallow root tea just goes down, cools it, and just soothes that throat. And then it kind of helps with the coughing too. Because it's not so irritated and it's soothed, you don't cough as much. When you make marshmallow root tea, you want to do a cool infusion. And this is simply done by just putting a couple of tablespoons of marshmallow root in a vessel and then pouring cool water over it. And I like to do this at nighttime. That way it can steep all night long and be ready in the morning. And it'll store in the refrigerator for about 4 days. Another really good use for marshmallow root is for our goats. I'll put a tablespoon of marshmallow root right over the top of their grain when I'm milking them. And what this does is it actually increases their milk production. I think marshmallow root is one of those really good herbs to have on the homestead, and I love it. Most herbs are safe, but you want to make sure that you learn your herbs before you dive in too deep. You want to make sure that there isn't any complications when using them that counteract with medications or can complicate problems with pregnancy. This is bee balm. This is probably one of my most favorite plants in the garden right now, and you can see why. Bee balm is also known as Monarda, and this particular variety is Monarda didyma, and it's related to the mint family, and it has a lot of the mint characteristics, like the square stem and the opposite leaves. And when you smell the leaf on this, it has a real fragrant smell. It almost smells like oregano, and most mints have a really strong leaf smell. This plant here is truly a pollinator-friendly plant. The hummingbirds, hummingbird moths, bees, and butterflies all love this plant in the garden. So this is great to use just as a pollinator plant, even if you weren't using it medicinally. This particular variety of Monarda didyma really does better in hot climates if you've got afternoon shade. But as you can see here, it's doing really good, and this is full on sun during the middle of the day through the entire day, and it's doing good. But the reason is because the soil's really rich and it stays moist here. So it's super happy in the middle of the garden here. Monarda is an antimicrobial, antibacterial, antifungal, diaphoretic, and even a nervine. Because of all of those great medicinal qualities that bee balm has, one of my favorite things to do is to take these fresh flowers and I'll actually just infuse these in honey. The honey will absorb all of those medicinal qualities through those months, and then come wintertime, I'll be able to use that honey in my tea. Bee balm really helps out knock out colds and sore throats, and because it's a nervine, it really helps tame the nerves down just a little bit. And it's really been successful for people who have a hard time sleeping. If they drink a cup of tea of this before they go to bed, that it helps them sleep better. The stems and the leaves and the flowers, these are all usable. Plus, I really like the Monarda flower for cut flower arrangements. One of the downsides about bee balm is it is susceptible to powdery mildew. And so if it does have powdery mildew, you don't want to be using that for medicine. This tall plant right here is common mullein. Mullein was really the cure-all years ago for respiratory problems. They used it for coughs, whooping cough, tuberculosis, bronchitis, hoarseness, pneumonia, flu, and sore throats. The reason it helps with all of those is because it helps the body expel mucus. One of the biggest things that we've actually used it for here is for earaches, and you use the flower for this. When my daughter was little, she used to get quite a few earaches, and so I would take the flowers of the mullein and infuse it in oil for about 6 weeks and always have it on hand, and we could use that just to soothe those earaches. Mullein is a demulcent, which means it's soothing, a lot like the marshmallow, but it's also an anti-inflammatory, so you can see why it'd be really good for those earaches. You can use the mullein leaves and harvest them, you can dry them, just about any time of the year. But when you're harvesting the flowers, they're only on during the summertime, and you want to get them just before the buds just start to open up. That's when they have the highest medicinal qualities. Mullein's a biannual, so it'll grow the first year, just leaves, and the second year it'll shoot up a stalk that'll have our flowers and our seed heads on it. Now, as a warning, mullein will produce millions of seeds on this one little stalk. And if you don't harvest your flowers and remove the stalk before it drops its seeds, you're going to have thousands of volunteers all over in your garden. But one thing about the little volunteers that we end up in our garden, if I do let it go to seed, is they're really easy to pull, and I'll just pull them up in little groups, lay them right where they're at. So that'll just create a little mulch layer, help keep the weeds down, and it'll also help keep that moisture in your soil. Yarrow is one of my favorite herbs. It has so many uses. Even if I weren't to use it medicinally, I love it in the garden because it attracts bees and butterflies, and it's really pretty in bouquets as well. Yarrow is in the Asteraceae family, which is the aster family, and some people have allergic reactions to that family. And so if you are, this isn't one of the herbs that you'd use topically or internally for medicine. This herb is well known for stopping bleeding, and we've had several personal experiences with yarrow, and this is why I will always have yarrow in my garden, and I think it's a must-have. One of them was when we had some severe bleeding with a family member, and so we just macerated up the yarrow leaves and placed it on that really bad cut, and it coagulated that blood pretty quickly. The other was we had a goat that had a really bad pregnancy, and we used a tea for uterine flush, and it really helped her clear up her infection. Yarrow has a really great ability to tighten and tone blood vessels, so it's often used as a salve for varicose veins or even as a tea. Yarrow is a great antiseptic. Traditionally, a yarrow tea was used to flush out infections or pussy wounds, and so you can see with all of these reasons why it would be really important to have this on your homestead. Yarrow is known as Achillea mellifolium, and the white yarrow is the best for using it medicinally, but the pastels work pretty good too. It is a perennial, and so it'll grow year after year, and it'll just increase in size, and so you can divide it and move it around or share it with some friends. It'll grow just about anywhere in your garden or on your landscape. Yarrow and bee balm make a really great companion together, and they're beautiful planted side by side. Burdock. Now this one comes with the disclosure, because this herb isn't for everyone to plant in their garden. So I'll tell you the bad before I tell you the good. Now this plant has tenacious roots, and those roots will go 10 foot easily in a season. And the plant, it gets really, really massive. Plus, its nickname is Velcro plant. And you can imagine why it's called Velcro plant. These little flowers right here get little barbs on them. And if you let them get their barbs, they'll attach themselves to everything, your clothing, your hair, whatever they get even close to, they will attach, and attach really good. However, the roots are really valuable, and they're so valuable that it's worth it for me to grow in my garden. I just try to really maintain the plant by digging it up and harvesting it often. One thing that I'll do to keep this bush a little bit more compact is trim it often. And when it does start to have its little blossoms on it, I like to put these in arrangements because they're really different and unique. And this just kind of keeps that Velcro effect down. Burdock leaves can get quite large, and one of the things that I like to do with them is make a nutritional tea for the garden. It contains a lot of phosphorus, potassium, and it's really high in minerals. I'll just take these leaves and macerate them up or chop them up and put them in a bucket of water and let it steep for a couple of days till I get a nice tea color. And then I can use that, just dilute it by half and put it on my tomato plants, right over the foliage, or any other type of a crop that you're growing. The burdock root is what we're going to be harvesting, and it is what has the medicinal qualities. And we'll want to harvest this in the fall time, late fall time, after we've had a frost and it's died back. And by harvesting it and harvesting it every year, that keeps it in control so it doesn't get out of control. The roots are highly nutritious. They're pretty deep rooted, and because of that, they're gathering up the minerals that are in the soil, and they keep it within their root system. And so by harvesting them in the fall, they'll have a higher mineral and nutrient content. Burdock can be used as a food. You can actually take that root and chop it up and throw it in some stir fries. But one of my favorite things to do with it is just to take that root when I'm making stock and just let it simmer with that stock. So I'm getting all those nutritional qualities of the burdock root in that stock for anything that I'm making. And it's really good for the winter time because it just really helps boost the immune system. It's really good to help build up a weak body, just really nutritive. It's excellent for the liver, which means it's good for the skin as well. So it's excellent for teenagers. One of the other things that I like to do with the root is I'll chop it up really fine and then I'll dehydrate it. You definitely want to chop it up before you dehydrate it because if you dry the whole root, it takes too long to dry. Plus, it's almost impossible to chop it up after it's been dried. The aerial parts of herbs are best harvested in the mornings, so your stems, your leaves, and your flowers. This way they have the highest nutritional content in them. We want to do it after the dew is gone, but before the sun hits them too hard. Root herbs should be harvested after they've gone dormant and before they start actively growing in the springtime. And it really doesn't matter what time of day you're harvesting the roots. If you can grow vegetables, you can certainly grow herbs because they really like the same growing conditions as your vegetables do. And if you're a little intimidated by herbs, then just try 2 or 3 new ones each year and get to learn those herbs, how they grow, when to harvest them, and what to do with them. There are so many useful herbs that you can grow in your garden, and these are just a few that we grow here. We'll be going over more as the season goes of the herbs that we grow here and their uses. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. I don't have hair under my armpits, do I? Lucky gut syndrome.